Well, this afternoon I thought I'd say a few general words about Buddhism and then open it up for you to ask questions, or if you have any, you might disagree with what I said, and that's all right as well. And this is one of the, indeed that's probably a good place to start, because for myself one of the things that really interested me and inspired me as a teenager to become interested in Buddhism was the discovery that Buddhism wasn't a belief system like other religions that I'd come across, meaning that it didn't expect you or demand you to believe certain things, but it was what I have later come to call an education system. And being an education system, it encourages people to question and doesn't fear or try to escape from doubts. Because if you try to find happiness through believing in things, you can be quite successful in that. I think many people seem to adopt that approach to life. But the problem often comes when you meet facts or you meet things that don't fit in with your beliefs. And then people can get very tense and anxious and defensive or even angry. Whereas in Buddhism, we're encouraged to test the teachings. So it's a different way of looking at religious teachings, not as what we call dogmas, meaning things that you're told you should believe in this if you want to be a Buddhist, for instance. But the Buddha is giving us tools to use in our education process. And one of the similes, one of the ways of talking about this is found in one of the old scriptures, in which the Buddha says, if someone wanted to give you or exchange with you some gold and gave you a lump of rock, you would be foolish just to take his word for it that is truly gold. What would you do? Well, you'd try to perform some tests. You'd weigh it, wouldn't you? You'd use a spectrometer, or you'd use whatever instruments you had at hand to discover whether that is in fact pure gold. It could just look like gold, it could just be the same color as gold, or about the same weight, for instance. And so the Buddha said with religious teachings, it's like that. You don't just take anybody's word for it. And as I say, this was the thing that I found quite breathtaking and exciting when I found the Buddha saying, look, don't believe this, even if it's the words of the Buddha himself. Don't believe something just because a religious teacher or someone in authority says that it should be that way or it is that way. So it seemed to me this was a religion that had gave you a great deal of credit and gave you that recognition that you have intelligence enough to be able to work things out for yourself. And Buddhism is a religion which has a very strong faith in human beings, rather than looking on human beings as basically very weak and helpless and needing some supernatural force to depend on. Buddha said that we can find within us that energy and that integrity and that safety. But that doesn't mean you just follow your own opinions and say, I'm independent and I know what I want and I know what I need. Because the Buddha also points out to us that very often we lie to ourselves or we deceive ourselves or our emotions lead us astray. So the Buddha says we have a potential in us to be truly free and happy, but that very few people realize that potential because they don't know the right way to make it true and real in their daily life. So this is what is special, I think, about Buddhism and unique, if you like, that it has some very clear and precise instructions, like a manual on how to lead a good life and how to educate the way you live in the world, educate your emotions, educate your thinking, educate every single part of your life to reach the optimum level. And for a Buddhist, this is what religion is all about. Now, if you were to open a book, encyclopedia of religions, and there is a definition of what does the word religion mean, and there are something like 10 or more definitions, and Buddhism doesn't fit even one of those. So, what can we conclude from that? One thing we can say, that means Buddhism's not really a religion. It's something else. And many people in the West have that opinion. They say, Buddhism's not really a religion, it's a science, it's a way of life, it's a philosophy, and so on and so forth. But another way of looking at that is to say, why should people in the West and intellectuals in Western countries be the people who decide what a religion is? What gives them the authority to say, my idea of a religion is what a religion really is, and Buddhism doesn't fit my idea of what religion is, therefore it's not a religion, you see. In the end, this is not such an important question, but my own view is that it's a different kind of religion. And as I say, it's a religion which is not a belief system in which you have to believe this, and this, and to do this, and this, and not do this, and this because it says so in a book. But it says that in true religious life, we adopt the attitude of a student and being someone who's interested in learning about life and learning about our experience. And the main interest here, and surely this is true for everyone, not just people interested in religion, is the question of happiness and suffering. Because everybody in the world, whether you profess a religion or you don't, I think we can all say everybody wants to be happy and nobody wants to suffer. So if you were to ask an Eskimo that question, so would you like to be happy? Would you like to avoid suffering? I think an Eskimo would agree. I think someone in Africa would agree. I think someone in Russia, Japan, anywhere in the world you were to ask anybody, do you like suffering? I don't think anybody would say yes. Say, do you like to be happy? And you say yes. So the question is, why, as a species, generally, given that the most important thing in our life that everyone agrees upon is that we want to be happy and we don't want to suffer, why is it that it's so difficult to find anybody who is genuinely happy? And why do we find so much suffering everywhere? In every single country of the world, in every strata of society. So it's not only that very poor people suffer, middle class people suffer, very rich people suffer. And so I think it doesn't take much intelligence to see that your income and how much money you have is any indication of how happy you are necessarily. Of course, if you have money, then it's helpful, isn't it? It means that you can live comfortably, and if you are ill, you can get good medical treatment and so on. So we're not saying that money is not important, but merely that perhaps it's not such a powerful predictor of happiness as many people believe. So this is again not like a Buddhist belief. You know, Buddhists say money doesn't make you happy. If you're a Buddhist, you have to believe that. But it's saying, does money make you very happy? How happy? How important is it to the experience of happiness in life? What other things are important? Now, if you... So, what we're looking at is the way human beings really are. Now, if you ever have, let's say you got given a present, say for your birthday or on Christmas or some special occasion, and it's something that you really, really wanted, and it's really important for you to have one of these things. It's a game, it's a computer or a game or something or other that you really, really wanted, and you're really, really happy that you've got it now. Now, what I want you to try to recall is what your experience of happiness with that thing was. You know, the first day that you got it, I think you were probably very happy and very excited. But how long did that happiness last? How long was that same intensity and real excitement and pleasure sustained? I think before very long it just started to fade a little bit. You still enjoyed it, but not quite the same in the same way. And perhaps after a while you just got used to it, and if it was something that you wanted to use every day, then maybe use it a little bit less often, or if it is something that, say like a computer that you do use all the time, but your sense of joy and pride that you're the possessor of this latest model computer is not there anymore. Everything in the world has that same kind of nature, would you say? And this is what the Buddha wants us to look at. For instance, if you have a particular kind of food that you really love, your favorite food, it's the most delicious thing. Every time you go to a restaurant, this is what you want to eat. And let's say that you were able to eat that thing, that favorite food, every single meal, every single day. For breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, day after day after day, you were able to eat your favorite food. What would your experience be? After a while you get fed up with the sight of it, wouldn't you? Years ago I remember I was living up in the mountains in Kanchanaburi, and it's a very poor area, and I used to like bamboo shoots, but in that area, that was all we used to get given on alms round, on Bindabat, was bamboo shoot curry, rice and bamboo shoot curry and a few bananas, day after day after day. And this went on for so long that now I can't even look at bamboo shoot curry. And this is a truth of the way human beings are, isn't it? That even something that we really like, if we have it too much, we get bored with it. And even people who love each other, if they are with each other all the time, sooner or later they get on each other's nerves. I once read I tell you, it's a kind of horrible thing, but you may be perhaps interested in this, that in Russia, before the communists took over, they were quite cruel also. It wasn't just the communists that were cruel. And they had one horrible way of punishing people, like a man and a wife who they thought were plotting against the government. What they do was they tie them together, back to back, with rope, and just leave them like that, like for a day or two. And it's so cruel because it's making the body of the person you love the most in the world the thing that tortures you. Just think being bound to somebody else's body by rope, laying on the floor for hour after hour after hour after hour. What a terrible, horrible thing. But this is the way that the nature of the human body can be. That's a very extreme example I've given you, obviously, but even with the things that we love, they can, under certain conditions and certain circumstances, be very unpleasant. Our bodies that we use for study, for play, very important to us, but our bodies are also the source of a lot of suffering, aren't they? The ordinary, everyday sufferings of being hungry, of getting thirsty, of needing to go to the toilet. All these things you don't even really think about because they're just so normal. And most of you are so fortunate that you've probably never really experienced what hunger's like. You've probably never really experienced what thirst is like. But it could happen any time because the body's like this. The body needs constantly to be topped up with food. It needs to be constantly topped up with fluid. You can't just leave your body and just say, get on with it. You have to look after it all the time. And you can't, you've got to wash it all the time. If you don't have a bath every day, you start to smell. If you don't brush your teeth every day, what would that be like? You see how much work it is just to keep this body kind of just ticking over in normal shape so it's not painful to you or not painful to other people. I mean, some people don't bathe and they don't mind, but it's everybody else who lives with them that suffers. But clothes, you see, what happens when beautiful, expensive fabrics and clothes come into contact with our body? Before very long, they get sweaty and stinky and you have to change them. This is the nature of the body. And when the body gets ill, when you get some kind of illness, then you know just how unpleasant that can be. So this is one of the things as Buddhists we're interested in. What we're saying, what does it really mean? What's it all about to be a human being? What does it mean to have a body? And what's our attitude to our body? This is, many people don't really use their intelligence and apply it to their relationship to their own bodies. Bodies have certain needs, need a certain amount of rest. And if you don't get the right amount of rest, then your body suffers, and your ability to think and to use your mind well is undermined. If you don't eat enough or you eat the wrong kinds of foods, your health can suffer. And so Buddhism says this isn't something separate from religion. In Buddhism, this is also part of it, because if you don't have an intelligent, smart relationship to your body, you needn't doubt that you'll ever be able to really develop anything in the spiritual plane. So this is one of the things, as I say, in Buddhism we're interested in, not just adopting particular beliefs about things, but developing an attitude of interest in what makes us happy and what makes us suffer. And are there things that always make us suffer, or things that just make us suffer sometimes. This is an important thing to look at as well. For instance, if you were to put your hand in the fire, whether you did it in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, you'd burn your hand. If a Christian puts his hand in the fire, his hand would burn. A Buddhist, a fully enlightened being, an atheist, anybody at all who matter who they are, what their beliefs are, whether they're in a good mood or a bad mood, if they put their hand in the fire, they'd burn their hand, wouldn't they? But why is it that there are other kinds of suffering which are not so fixed? For instance, some people get sick and they get very depressed when they feel a lot of pain and the medicines are not working and they don't seem to get better, and they don't know what to do about it, and then they can get very depressed. But not everybody in that situation gets depressed, or not depressed to the same extent. So it's obviously a little bit different from if you put your hand in the fire and everybody burns their hand in the same way. So on the physical level, everyone's more or less in the same condition. But our minds obviously vary. Some people experience some misfortune in their life, and they get very unhappy and they feel, that's it, I've got no way, I'm a mess, I've failed in everything, and they get so upset that they sometimes even get mentally ill, or sometimes even want to kill themselves. So that's the extent to which the mental suffering can reach for some people. And other people seem to be able to bounce back when bad things happen, and they have the same kind of unpleasant experiences, but they don't suffer in their mind to the same extent. So this is a truth about human beings, not a religious belief, but it's an observation that we can all make, that misfortunes and unpleasant things happen to everybody, but some people seem to deal with it better than others. So why should that be? And is it possible to train yourself in such a way that you're in the group of people that doesn't suffer so much when bad things happen, someone who can bounce back again? And of course what the Buddha says is, yes, you can, that there's certain things that you can do. It's a very practical teaching. So, for instance, your attitude to things is very important, isn't it? If some people feel that bad things happen to them, and that means that they're a bad person, and now we can call that a very unhealthy way of looking at life. But somebody else, the same thing might happen, and they might think, well, this is a teaching, something for me to learn from, and perhaps if I go through this and come out the other way, I'll be a much stronger and wiser person. So the way your attitude to things and how you understand the meaning of what happens to you in life, or what you do, is a very important thing to pay attention to. Now, one of the very practical means and techniques, and something which is very much emphasized in Buddhism, is the ability to be in the present moment. And you've probably heard teachings of that kind, and perhaps in the meditation instruction you had a bit earlier on, one of the things you were told to do is to let go of all the thoughts of the past and the future. Now, just being in the present moment isn't like the goal. It doesn't mean that everything's all right once you're in the present moment, because there may well be no wisdom and intelligence there. Animals, I think, are probably in the present moment most of the time, or all of the time. But as a human being, what we notice is that we waste a lot of time, waste a lot of energy going over and over and over things that have happened in the past, not for any real benefit to us in the future, but because it's like an addiction, we can't help it. Or else maybe when we get a little bit sad or bored or fed up, then we like to think of some good thing that happened in the past and it cheers us up. So that's one kind of strategy that human beings have to make them feel a bit better in their life. You feel bad and you try to think about something good that happened to you in the past. Yeah, you feel a bit better. Another way is to have some kind of expectation of the future. When you're feeling unhappy or bored, you can think, well, never mind, tomorrow I'm going off on a trip here and there, I'll be going to play sport or going to the movies or something like that. So this is another allied strategy, which means you think about something good that you hope will happen in the future, and that makes you feel better. But thinking about the future has the other side, like the dark side, and that means that sometimes you just can't stop thinking about things that haven't happened yet, that might happen, and which you don't want to happen. For instance, you're going to have some kind of examination, and you know sitting and worrying about it isn't going to help you get any better results in your exams. It's probably going to make it worse. And what you really need to do is to do the revision and to prepare, and you know all that, but you can't help it. Oh, what if I don't pass? What will happen then? And this and that. And then if that happened, and this would happen, and that happened, and your mind just goes on and on and on. And you don't want to think like that. You really just would much prefer not to be able to have to think like that, but you don't know how to stop. So what the Buddha is saying is, look at your mind and see how out of control it is, and how your mind, which we can identify as probably the most important factor in producing real happiness in your life, is not able to do that because we've never trained it and never educated it. So, being smart and being able to do maths and learn foreign languages and to be creative and to be able to paint and draw and all these things, these are certain powers and certain gifts and things that we can develop to a certain amount through normal education, but they don't touch those parts of our minds which really condition our experience of happiness and suffering at a really basic level. So what the Buddha says is, if you want to be happy in your life, you have to really understand the way your mind works and try to train it in such a way that it doesn't just keep creating all these thoughts and feelings which upset and disturb the mind, but we are able to produce more and more of the positive mental states which make us happy. So it's not kind of something like really mystical and strange and exotic. It's really quite down to earth, and it's something that every one of us can do to a certain extent, and it's worth doing, I think. So when we look at our thinking, we begin to see probably about 90% of it is probably a waste of time. There's very little that you think about in the day which is really useful to your life. So is that true? Again, this isn't what Buddha says or what I say. This is something that I want you to look at and see whether it fits with your own experience. So if you could let go or abandon and to be free of all the useless thinking, one, your mind would feel a lot more spacious, like taking all the furniture out of a room, you've just got more space and airy. And secondly, when you want to think about something in particular, you want to make a plan, you want to analyze something, or you want to be creative, then you've got the energy and you've got the focus that you can do that much more successfully. So this is the reason why we train our mind to be in the present moment and to see all the thoughts of the past as just that. They're just thoughts of the past, and thoughts of the future are thoughts of the future. So sometimes a thought of the past is very useful. You need it if you have some kind of a problem. And one of the things you want to be able to do is just to check, have I ever had this kind of problem in the past? What did I do? Was I successful? You say, well, last time I did that. Let's try that again and see if that works this time. If it does, well, that's wonderful. So using your experience from the past to help you to solve problems and to fulfill your responsibilities, your duties in the present is obviously a very wise and useful thing to do. And similarly, thinking about the future, we all have to make plans for the future. And we've all come here today because you made an agreement to come in advance. You said, and I've come here because I made plans months before to come. So it's not that we can't think about the future at all. But when we want to think about the past or about the future, we know it's just that. It's thoughts of the past and thoughts of the future. And then we make use of them. And so what we need to have to help us to be able to do this is we have a certain object, let's say the breath or a particular word, and we say we'll use that as our anchor. And so we bring our mind back to that, and then when it wanders off, we realize and we bring it back, and it wanders off and we bring it back. So this is a training like you train a wild elephant. And one of the ways they have of training a wild elephant, I'm not sure in Thailand, in India, they start off with the baby elephant, and then they attach a rope to one of its legs, and then another rope to a post which is firmly embedded in the earth. And so the baby elephant, he wants to be free, and he pulls and pulls and pulls at the stake. But then he realizes after a while that no matter how hard he pulls, he can't get free. And after a certain while, he just gets used to being attached to that post and stops running about here and there. Now the interesting thing is that after a while, the person who's training the elephant can untie the rope from the stake, but because the elephant has that rope around his leg, he still feels as if he's tied to the stake, and he won't run off anywhere. And this is and if an elephant starts to misbehave, the elephants that have been trained this way, all they have to do is just to get close and tie a rope around the elephant's leg. Don't have to do anything more than that, and then the elephant calms down. So this is somewhat similar to when we train our minds. We start off and you have this stake, which I compared with an anchor or a stake, something embedded in the earth that doesn't move, and you just keep coming back to that again and again until your mind is happy and willing to do that, and it doesn't try to wander off and think about that and think about this when it's not appropriate to do so. And then after a certain while, your mind finds it's very pleasant to be like that. It makes you happy not to be have your mind rushing all over the other place, up and down, round and round, but to have a certain stability and evenness of your mind. And then you don't, in your daily life, it's not that you have to be obviously watching your breath every moment, but just like the elephant with the string or the rope around his leg, you start to develop that ability to be in the present moment more and more. Now that's not the end of the story, it's the beginning, if you like, because when you can be in the present moment, then you can learn from what's happening, and you can see, oh yes, that's interesting, oh that's and what you begin to notice and very soon is this what we call the law of karma, which is that good intentions have good results and bad intentions have bad results. And so again, if you just read that in a book, it's like, oh, this is a Buddhist teaching. Buddhism teaches karma or kamma. But what we're doing when we learn to be in the present moment is we begin to see for ourselves how our minds work and how certain ways of thinking lead to certain ways of acting, and they make us happy and make other people happy. Certain ways of thinking, certain ways of looking at things, certain intentions lead to unwholesome kinds of emotions and actions and speech, which causes distress and suffering for ourselves and others. So we begin to see how this actually works in ourselves, not just in a book. So this is what Buddhism says. Buddhism says it's not just a matter of reading things and memorizing things. You know, in the education system in this country for a long time, the children would just be taught to memorize all these lists. What are the Four Noble Truths? What are the Eightfold Paths? And that means you studied Buddhism because you can remember these words. But of course you remember them, then before very long you forget them. So that's not really the point about memorizing lists of terms, but it's more having this attitude of interest in learning from life, and with that faith in your ability as a human being to free yourself from pain and suffering, to develop inner peace and happiness, and to lead your life with wisdom rather than just to follow desires and prejudices and so on. And this is what Buddhism says religion is about. It's how to lead the good life or the best life using the tools that you have. It's not about believing in things, praying for things, asking for things, depending on things outside of yourself, but it's developing the tools and the ability to become a refuge to yourself. And the Buddha says the more that you take on this interest, this attitude, this kind of training and education, not only is your ability to make yourself happy and peaceful much enhanced, but also it has a good effect on the people around you. Of course, if you are more sensitive to others, how your behavior affects other people, you're kind and generous, and so on, then everyone around you, I think, is going to like that and to feel better as a result. So the idea is that the more you help yourself in the right way, the more you help others, and the more you help others in the right way, the more you help yourself. Okay, so that's the talk that I wanted to give you this afternoon, and now we can have some discussion, if you like. Would you like to get up and stretch your legs for 5 minutes first? Or are you? Okay, we'll have a short break for 5 minutes, okay?